So apart from the coming of age program, we're really left on our own to answer this big question: what do you believe? We're taught about other religions and their beliefs, but they're presented to us like options. So when given the choice between those religions which tell you what to do and what to think, and being a you and not really feeling the need to believe anything, you might as well be a you and not really believe anything. I think this is why a large number of you youth call themselves atheists. Not that this is a bad thing. It's a perfectly legitimate point of view, but it feels like, to me, it's such a popular idea among youth because the only God we've been exposed to is the God from the Bible, who sends people to hell and floods the earth when he's unhappy. I would be an atheist too if that was the only God I knew. It has been my experience that we youth, and not a small number of adults, I bet, have these solid definitions of words like God. And we have a hard time getting around them. Words like holy, divine, and spirit, and sacred that we attribute to other religions, we therefore can't incorporate into our own faith. Last year, I went to the Unitarian Universalist Northern New England District Spring Conference with my dad. While we were there, we heard a presentation by Connie Goodbread. One of the things she talked about was the use of words like God and holy, and how she could use them with confidence, knowing that she used them differently than the Christian church, for example. And I liked that a lot. That was one of the things that helped me find what I believed to be true. Because I suddenly realized that I could use all those words without connecting them to those faiths with which I disagree. So I believe that everything is holy, and everything is sacred, and that holy and sacred have similar meanings to my word God. No one had ever used these words in this context for me before, and it's easy to see why. I used to hate to use the word God. I only thought of it with the biblical definition. So I didn't want to use it. I didn't even want to think about it too hard, because quite frankly, the Bible is pretty scary, especially as a kid. So we learned at a very young age to shy away from words like that, for fear of the connotations they bring with them. For instance, once someone asked a friend of mine what a UU was, and they said, UUs don't believe in God. Well, UUs don't have to believe in God. They quickly corrected themselves. And though this is true, we don't have to believe in God, I wonder why this is our distinguishing feature for this particular youth. And then I think about it more and realize it's probably a distinguishing feature for most youth. When we learn about all these religions who force you to believe in some sort of higher power, and we're not, it's an easy way to distinguish us for those that don't know. I used to think that it was just youth who took issue with this Bible language. But then I remembered, a few summers ago at camp, someone said something was a miracle. She was joking, really, but this middle-aged man looks at her really seriously and says, "UUs don't believe in miracles." And I was really taken aback. Even back then, a couple years ago, I knew I believed in miracles. I believed in the miracle of birth and the miracle of love. I couldn't understand how someone would make such a blanket statement about us like that, and nobody said anything to him. Probably because he was the only adult in the room. And I'm guessing none of us had our beliefs worked out that well. So I think about how we're brought up with all these different ways of thinking, and wonder why I'm drawn to this faith, where on one hand, I feel accepted and affirmed in my beliefs, and on the other hand, I don't really feel connected in the way I would like to be, especially to other youth. I've known for a long time that I really need to get to know people to form any sort of connection. So it's difficult when we're so good at trying to honor one another's beliefs and accept everyone for who they are, knowing that everyone is brought up differently. Yet we really only have one way of being together as youth. In this group that seems to act with one mind, if the group decides to do something, that's what's done. There doesn't seem to be much room for freedom of individuality. I spent a lot of this past summer at Ferry Beach, where a lot of and they were the other two kids who spent their whole summer there. So I had time to get to know them both individually, and they are really good friends. And I had time to interact with both of them individually. I had interacted with them both a little bit in previous summers, but didn't really become friends with them because they were just a part of the bigger group. I didn't know either of them as individuals until I spent the whole summer with them. The things we do outside of church for youth, like youth ponds or at Ferry Beach, don't really support any other way of connecting with each other than this group way that seems to work for a lot of kids. The only way I know to get to know someone is through individual interaction, and I really need to get to know people before I can feel like a friend. Some of the people who don't get this group friendship-making thing just say, all right, and generally stay away from it, and that's good, if it works for them. But I wanted so badly to be able to make friends like this, I started to wonder if there was something wrong with me. I didn't know anyone else who didn't work in this group. So I would push myself into uncomfortable situations, trying to feel like a part of the group, because if I wasn't part of that, I wouldn't be a part of anything. We only have this one way of being together, so if you don't work like that, you're not part of anything. We don't often think about the odd ones out because they're driven away sometimes. I've been sort of driven away from these group things that are a huge part of AYoUUth spirituality. When I go into this big group of people who accept me and even say I'm their friend without questioning or even getting to know me, I feel like no one actually wants to know me sometimes. Eventually, I did realize that there's nothing wrong with me. So my next immediate thought was, there must be something wrong with them. But of course, there isn't anything wrong with them, just like there isn't anything wrong with me. Some people just operate differently. So instead of giving up on my fellow youth entirely, what I try to do is reach out, individually, the only way I know how. Sometimes that doesn't really get me anywhere, and I still feel like an outsider, but other times someone will reach back for you, and you can make that connection, despite the rest of the group. One thing everyone should keep in mind is that not everyone can reach out. When you're feeling good and a part of the group, people around you might not be, and taking the time to reach out to someone could bring them a little closer to the group, or at least to you. So when I think back to our principles in a more mature way, respecting all beings, offering fair and kind treatment to all, yearning to learn, growing by exploring, believing in our ideals and acting on them, insisting on freedom, justice, and peace, and valuing our connection with nature, I realize that they're really a double-edged sword, in that when we try to offer fair and kind treatment to all, we sometimes forget that not everyone is the same. And to be kind and fair and respectful, it's important that you really know someone first. We don't want to seem prying or intrusive, so sometimes it looks like we're just stepping back and being unconcerned. So what I want you to do when you leave here today is just try and be extra aware of how you live our principles and how to respect everyone's individuality. You need to know what makes them an individual first. Blessed be.